Hi, everyone. This is a slideshow about some negative arguments you can make when we're debating policy debates. Um, these main negative arguments are called disadvantages, which are basically the same as advantages, but obviously instead of benefits of the plan, they're consequences of the plan, and counterplans, right? So plans that wouldn't be defund the police, but that would do something different to solve the problem. So we're going to talk about the basic structure of these and components of them, and then a little bit on how the affirmative might respond to them as well. This should be a pretty short slideshow. First of all, a disadvantage, again, is a harm or a side effect caused by the affirmative plan. Some examples might include, for our topic, the crime disadvantage. Obviously, defunding the police might cause a disadvantage of increasing crime because the police aren't present everywhere. A training disadvantage, I've seen a lot of evidence that says that actually if you defund the police, then there'll be less money for training, which would make a lot of the problems of use of force, etc., even worse. There's a police community relations disadvantage. The idea here is that when the police are out and about in the community, that promotes better police community relations. Also, when people feel safe, that there are better police community relations. So when you defund the police, there's less police around, people feel less safe, and therefore police community relations go down. And some of the consequences of that relate to crime and the ability for police to solve crime, because if the community doesn't trust the police, obviously then they're not going to tell the police when a crime happens, or they're going to not be witnesses, etc., which makes solving crime even harder. And the final one, I haven't seen evidence for this yet, but I think it's a possible argument out there, is the idea of vigilantism, that if you defund the police or cut the police budget, that sort of people will become afraid and take the law into their own hands. We've seen this some during the protests with the militias that have been showing up, claiming that they're helping the police and such. And I could see that increase if there is widespread defunding of the police. So the parts of a disadvantage. What does a disadvantage look like? Kind of when you promote, when you advance it in your negative speeches. First of all, is called uniqueness. This is the idea that the problem is not happening now. So crime is low now. There's adequate training now. The training, we're increasing training of police as we speak. Those kinds of things, right? So this proves that this problem is not being caused by something else. That only the plan is the unique cause of that. Only defunding the police would uniquely cause this. The second part, the link. How does the plan cause this harm? How does defunding the police reduce training? How does defunding the police increase crime? You might have more than one link as part of a disadvantage, because this is probably going to be the thing that is most under dispute by the affirmative. So for instance, with the crime disadvantage, you might say, less police will lead to more crime, less money for the police will lead to worse training for the police, which will lead to more crime. Less money for the police will cause cutbacks in staffing of the police, which will lead to more crime. So you can have more than one link as part of your disadvantage. And then the impact. What is the consequence? What is the significance of this problem? So, essentially, why is crime bad? Maybe you would give us a statistic about, how many people die of violent crimes every year. Or maybe you would talk about how crime destroys communities and prevents people from having opportunities and such. You might just find a good quote from one of your articles about how crime, for instance, destroys Black communities. I've seen those quotes floating around quite a bit. So when you're answering disadvantages, essentially you can just answer those three parts that we talked about. So you can say, other things are causing this problem. For instance, crime is already high, or the cause of crime is poverty. Might be a way to say, the plan doesn't cause crime. Police aren't the solution to crime. Poverty causes crime, etc. No link. The plan does not cause this problem. So, for instance, the affirmative might say the police are not good at solving crime. There's little evidence that the police actually reduce crime. Mostly, they just file reports about crime after those crimes have already happened. That kind of thing. Link turn. The plan actually solves this. So, there's a lot of arguments that the plan defunding the police reduces crime by helping address mental illness and homelessness and addiction better. Another argument here might be that by reducing the burden on police, they have more time to focus on violent crime, and so therefore they will do a better job of actually reducing crime. There's a lot of potential arguments here as well. Police-community relations. The defunding the police will improve police-community relations and thereby help solve crime. And in general, maybe arguments about why over-policing and over-incarceration actually increase crime, right? People get stuck in this cycle of crime because of the fines and the jailing that police do. So getting rid of policing might help reduce crime that way by getting people out of that cycle of crime. And then finally, no impact. This won't be that bad. You don't have to say crime is not bad, but you can argue here, minimize their impact by saying, yeah, maybe crime would go up a little bit, but even if it did, compared to the benefits, that we have offered, that's not that big a deal, or it's not that huge a deal. Or, you can question here, again, sufficiency, for instance, like how much have they proven that crime will go up? Can they actually prove that this is a significant impact that would happen after the fact? The next type of argument the negative might offer, and let me just say that, you can, again, divide these up across the speeches where maybe the first negative constructive offers a disadvantage and the second negative constructive offers a counterplan and another disadvantage or something like that, right? And be sure that when you do offer these things that you clearly label them, right? So my first disadvantage is the crime disadvantage, or our first disadvantage. Our counterplan is a better training reform counterplan. So a counterplan, sort of like a disadvantage, is exactly what it sounds like. It's a counter plan to the affirmative's plan. So the affirmative has proposed defunding the police in a particular way. The negative might want to say, no, we shouldn't defund the police, but we should reform them in some way. And I've seen a bunch of briefs that have different proposals for reform that do not include defunding. Obviously, this counterplan should be non-topical. That is, it shouldn't be a defunding the police counterplan, because that would only prove the affirmative side. It needs to be something that does not defund the police, but that's only reform. And the structure sort of goes similar to the way you might structure your affirmative case. First of all, you present the plan. Here's our counterplan. We'll set up a national registry for police misconduct, so that police that have abused people in the past won't continue to have their jobs. Present the solvency. How does this solve the advantages that the affirmative is talking about? How would, for instance, this reduce police abuse of minority communities? How, for instance, might this improve social services, etc.? Typically, you're going to present some evidence to back up why this would solve these problems. And then finally, explain how it avoids the disadvantage, right? You can say, by not defunding the police, this avoids our crime disadvantage, and therefore avoids our vigilantism disadvantage, and therefore is, a net beneficial or superior option to the affirmative. So how might we answer counterplans as the affirmative? I think the main way to do this is to challenge the solvency, to say that, unless you defund the police, you're not going to solve the problems that we're talking about. And we do have a lot of evidence on the blog that makes precisely that argument, that the police can't be reformed, that we need to reduce them. Another argument here is a permutation. This is the idea that we should do both plans and that doing both would be better. The reason this is an affirmative argument is because it says that we still need the affirmative plan as well, right? That sure, maybe the negative plan is a good additional idea, but doing both is the best approach here. And then finally, a disadvantage. Does this plan cause some other harm? One I'm thinking of here is, a funding disadvantage, that because their negative is not defunding the police, then there's not funding available for other things like the social services that a lot of the defunding the police arguments talk about, right? So defunding the police plans often say, let's shift this money to social workers and mental health counseling and EMTs and things like that. So you might say as a disadvantage of the counterplan that if you don't defund the police, if you only reform them, then there's no money available for those services, and therefore you don't help address addiction or homelessness or emergency medical situations, for instance. So I think a lot of this is pretty common sense. I mean, use your common sense. How if someone presents an alternative plan, how would you answer an alternative plan? If someone says this is going to cause something bad to happen, how would you answer those things? But I wanted to give you, some ideas of some of the disadvantages and counterplans out there, and a little bit of the debate lingo, so you can, kind of flag your arguments better, and maybe think about how you're going to answer those arguments and stuff. So as you're preparing rebuttals, you can think about, okay, can I make a no-link argument? Can I make a link-turn argument? How can I say that the counterplan won't solve, etc.? So next class, we will talk some more about some tips on debating, some of the debate skills that we haven't had a whole lot of time to talk about. But I'm looking forward to our next debates, and these are the main negative arguments that you should be looking to craft for those debates. Good luck and have a good week.